I'm not worried about the result. Let's fix the process, because if we fix the process and if we focus on improving the process, you will get better, right? In the military, if you improve the process of kicking in a door and clearing a building, you will clear more buildings and you will have less casualties, hypothetically, right? Obviously, the enemy has a say in that, but for the most part, you will get better, right? On a football field, if you improve your offense's ability to operate, you will score more touchdowns. The touchdowns are a byproduct of you getting better at the process. And so in your business and in your life, you should be evaluating your process and not judging it.
Welcome back to the show, Disruptors. I'm your host, Aaron Hale. This is Point of Impact. From the weight room to the boardroom, David Kitch went from a Division I NCAA strength and conditioning coach to taking the lessons learned and the expertise he gained training elite athletes to training leaders, executives, and CEOs in the corporate world. Today, Coach Kitch is going to teach us a few things about developing a winning mindset. A few things you're going to learn today. Focusing on the process over outcome and turn that grind into greatness. There are no losses, only lessons, and turning your failures into that fuel for growth. Focusing on winning culture and leading in any arena. We'll talk about that and quite a bit more. And if you want a few examples of elite mindset and resilience, all you got to do is go back to a previous episode of Point of Impact where you'll hear the story of Brian Big Country Conwell and a story about an Army sergeant whose legs were crushed under a military vehicle. But instead of ending his life, it just began a new one as an elite Paralympic multi-sport athlete. Also, my friend Devin Ramos, who was a special forces warrior who became a successful business owner and real estate investor. Devin started his own show recently, Die Hard Entrepreneur Stories. And I just happened to be, have the honor and pleasure of being his very first guest. He's only a few episodes in, so if you go to this podcast platform or any other, subscribe to Die Hard Entrepreneur Stories, and it won't take you long to catch up. Trust me, he's going to have a successful show because just like Coach Kitch and Big Country, Devin Ramos is dedicated to winning. Well, without further ado, my conversation with David Kitch, Coach Kitch, right now. David, welcome to the Point of Impact.
Man, fired up to be here, brother. Fired up to share the stage with you and get the opportunity to talk life and leadership.
Well, I'll tell you what, I've been looking forward to this conversation. It's actually been a little while coming because I know Marquez Acton introduced us a little while back, and we just haven't found a time. So I appreciate you making the time, and I'm excited to get into it myself.
Yeah, man. It's, I always feel like good people know good people, right? So whenever I get a referral or get an introduction through a friend of mine, I'm always excited to connect with that person because I know they're going to be like-minded and share some insights, and I'll be able to learn from them as well.
Well, first thing I want to ask you is you went from a physical strength coach, on the collegiate level, to more of a mental strength coach. And tell me a little bit about the transition, why you made that leap, and give me a little background.
Yeah, it's interesting, to your point. Yeah, I spent 10 years as a college strength and conditioning coach. And throughout that time, obviously I'm training the physical body of these athletes, but really what I found was 90% of the time I was training their mind more so. I was training perspective. I was training discipline. I was training resilience. I was training the ability to fail and move forward. I was training the ability to actually embrace failure and look forward to pushing your edges and exploring those edges of your performance and what you can do on a daily basis. And the biggest thing that I taught was a commitment to a process that you're not guaranteed an outcome in, right? That's what training is really at the end of the day. You're not guaranteed to win on the field or on the court because you train in the weight room, but you are guaranteed to become the kind of person that can win. And so that's really what I was training. And so through that time, I fell more in love with the sports psychology side and the mindset behind training. I love the physical aspect. The weight room has been my anchor for my entire life. Since I was a young kid, the weight room has always been my home. And so I always loved that part, but I fell in love with the mind behind it and the mindset piece, and the sports psychology. And so that's what ultimately made me make the shift, was that I saw the impact that it could have when people can make that distinction and those choices to start to be committed to the person that they say they want to become, no matter what it requires of them. Right. And so that's what I do now on the leadership side and also on the performance side. I still do performance coaching for high performing individuals and people that want to show up as their best version of themselves. I help them tap into that elite athlete mindset of, I say no L's, only lessons. Right. So we never take a loss. We always learn. And so that's really what sparked the transition, was just the perspective from me of understanding what I was actually coaching.
You mentioned right at the outset about leadership. How does that play a role? I mean, so far, you've talked about physical strength to personal strength, and that's an intrinsic, it's an internal thing. Leadership is almost external and influence thing. So, tell me a little bit more about how leadership plays a role here.
Yeah, it is external, but it's also internal, right? Because if you can't lead yourself, then you can't lead anybody else. And the best leaders have mastered the ability to be great followers, right? They follow a school of discipline. They follow a school of thought. They have mentors. Like, those are the best leaders that I've been around. So as much as leadership is about influencing other people, it's also about your ability to lead yourself. And so we always start with that when we're working on leadership skills: is, are you somebody worth following, going somewhere worth going for a reason that matters? If you're not those three things, then you're not a leader, right? And so once we get those three things handled, now we can start to work on all of those quote unquote soft skills that come with leadership, right? And that's things like your ability to communicate, your ability to be an empathetic listener, your ability to build relationships and build trust. We call it our 5 C's. So we say it starts with character, and then you have to learn to be consistent in that. You have to figure out what you're committed to. You have to be able to be creative. You got to be able to communicate, right? So all of those things come together to form leadership and to form that influence and that ability to become what we call a room tilter, where when you're in the room, people are gravitating towards you, and you have that magnetic, and it doesn't have to be an outward energy, but that magnetic character and that magnetic drive that people are drawn to.
Hmm. Well, then let's start with the foundations. Define leadership, because I've heard so many different definitions and then people start describing characters, personalities. But what do you define leadership as?
When I look at leadership, honestly, to me, it's about influencing a group of people for a bigger future and that are part of a vision, right? And so to me, that's really what leadership is. But I simplify it even further, and I said it earlier. It's being somebody worth following, going somewhere worth going for a reason that matters. That's what leadership really is. That's what leadership really is. Because ultimately, if you're those things, the right tribe will find you and you will lead people, right? And that tribe may be your family, it may be your community, it may be your business. But the right people will find you if you put that stuff forward in everything that you do, right? If you're value driven, if you're mission driven, if you're vision driven, if you put those things out into the world, then the right people will find you, and then you're able to lead them again for a bigger reason, right? It can't be about you. The minute it's about you, you're not leading anybody.
Well, I know that's one side of it, but I know I've had plenty, especially being a former service member, having examples of bad leadership, but they still held influence, whether it was a positional authority or it was just uh, by that personality influence. So, is leadership is a dual edged sword where you may be able to uh, influence others along a common goal, but that common goal could be a positive or a negative.
Absolutely, yeah. And there's leaders who maybe don't have a title, but to your point, they have that personality and that charisma, that they're able to influence people. Right? You look at some of the greatest quote unquote villains, right, and of our history. I mean, they have a charisma. They have an ability to emotionally charge people behind a mission, and they may get people to do awful things, right? And so yeah, it comes down to, and that's why the character is the linchpin of it all. That's why character is that pivot point, right? That's where you decide how am I going to influence these people? Which direction are we going to take them? And that's a reflection of your character. So yeah, absolutely. And those people that lead based on title or based on simply a role or a position that they're in, to me, that's coercion. That's not leadership, right? I think those are two very different things.
Absolutely true. And I think uh, that's like the last resort type of thing to get others to do what you want them to do or what you need them to do is out of sheer force.
Yeah, it's
However,
it's the low it's the lowest common denominator.
however, there are many examples throughout history of very charismatic people, incredible communicators, leading people down the wrong road. Uh, but let me let's take it down the right road. Uh, for leaders that want to make a positive influence and impact in the world, but maybe they've got some limiting beliefs. I'm not a great communicator. I'm not. I don't have that kind of personality. Uh, and what you've said before is that theaters are built, not born. But is this like an entirely new character shift? Do they have to be somebody different, or are these just skills that anybody can learn?
Yeah, I believe there's skills that anybody can learn. I think your personality plays a role in the way that you lead, but it doesn't play a role in your ability to lead, right? As far as introvert versus extrovert, or if you're somebody that you say you're charismatic versus somebody that's a little bit more nonchalant or a little bit more laid back. I think all of those can be effective leadership strategies. You just have to lean into your strengths, and then around that you have to build your leadership toolbox, right? So it's not so much the what, it's more the how does this show up? How does my ability to listen show up? How does my ability to speak and influence people show up? How does my ability to demonstrate and model the behaviors that I want my group to follow? How does that show up? Right? You don't always have to be the loudest in the room or the flashiest in the room. And to my experience, a lot of times those aren't the strong leaders. To a lot of times, the best leaders that I've been around, I love leaders that I call quiet strength. I love leaders that are laid back and nonchalant, but when they speak, it holds power, right? When they speak, it holds that influence, and they speak with their convictions. They don't say more than needs to be said, right? And sometimes as leaders, we get in that trap of we talk to hear ourselves talk because we feel like we should, right? I love those leaders that might sit in a meeting and just listen for 30 minutes. And then at the end, they say one thing, and it's the most powerful thing that you hear throughout the entire meeting, because they've been listening the whole time. They've been digesting the information. They've been thinking, right? And so, again, to your point, I think all of these are skills that you can build. You just have to know how they're going to manifest when they play in and when they mix with your personality. And so if you think about it, even for me, I'm a little bit more outspoken. I'm a louder kind of person. I have a high energy level. And so when I lead, that's my particular way of leading. But when I was building staffs around me and other leaders that I wanted to help lead a team, I was hiring people that were much more laid back. I was hiring people that were the opposite of me, because I think that, in my opinion, you should have a well-rounded leadership team. You should have a leadership team that has different traits and people that are the opposite of you, because not everybody can be led the same way. Your preferred leadership style is irrelevant if the people around you can't be led that way.
Mm-hmm. And you know what? We've had guests on in the past that have talked about culture index, personality types, and building strong teams of complementary, albeit very different personalities and skills. It's funny you mentioned that about the granite leadership type, the one that's less spoken. I mean, I is it, maybe it's my personality. Maybe it's because I have limited input, so I have this overdeveloped output. That you can't get me to shut up sometimes. But I've recently read the biography on George Washington, and he's like the ultimate stoic. Nobody knew what his personality, nobody knew what he was even thinking most of the time, or how he was feeling about something, because he spoke very little uh, until he was just absorbing, the Continental Congress or other places. He was absorbing things, and then when called to speak, it was only what was absolutely necessary. Uh, but his absolutely a major uh, presence wherever he was. It didn't hurt that he was huge.
Well, I think the presence is another piece of leadership, right? How do you carry yourself, right? And it's not necessarily this forceful, swaggering type personality. It's more so, can you carry yourself with confidence, and can you be comfortable in the silence, or do you feel the need to break the silence all the time? Do you feel the need to move on? They say wasted movement, right? Like I look at people's body language and I look and see like, oh, he's fidgeting or he's moving around. Like, to me, I'm like, no, can you sit in the silence and sit in the stillness and then command the room when you need to, right? Like, I think that's a really powerful dynamic to have, right? And the ability to navigate space well and understand how to utilize a room, right? So one of the things that I do personally is, like, when I give a workshop, I'll go in before the workshop and I set the room up the way I want it. I don't care how the event coordinator had it set up. I'm going to set it up the way that I want it for maximum impact. I'm going to set it up the way that I want it so that the people in the room feel that connection, so that I can utilize the space to my advantage, and so that I can utilize, what I can remove barriers between me and the people. I can make sure that they can see my feet, my hands, everything about me. There's nothing in between us, right? And so I think great leaders, some of them do that subconsciously and are really good at navigating space and navigating body language subconsciously. Other ones really study it and they figure out, how can I use that? And again, these are all influential tools without using your voice, right? Where are your hands? You can subtly influence people with hand gestures. You can subtly influence people with where your shoulders are, with the way that you make eye contact, with the way that you hold yourself while they're speaking. All of these things are influential tools that you can use. And I think great leaders get really good at that. And that's why you see phenomenal leaders that have a really high emotional intelligence as well. They get really good at reading rooms and reading people and making people feel comfortable. If you look at Barack Obama, he did a phenomenal job of this. All of his public appearances, there's actually a cadence to the way that he interacts with the host or the audience that he's coming on as soon as he gets on stage, and he repeats it every time. And it's always a self-deprecating joke, so he makes fun of himself. He compliments either the person he's meeting or the audience, and then he removes some sort of barrier between him and the person. So right there, he's setting it up to where he's equaling out the power dynamic so that that person feels comfortable enough to talk to him. Now, is that power dynamic truly gone? No, he's still the president of the United States. He's the most powerful man in the free world, right? So there's still that natural power dynamic, but he doesn't need it to be enhanced by environmental factors because he knows that it's there. And that's confidence, right? That's the ability to come down to a level playing field with people, knowing that that power dynamic is already there. So if you're a boss at a business, do you need the desk between you and the employees when you're having a meeting, or can you sit at a table where you guys are, next to each other? Do you need those? Do you need all that stuff around you to enhance the power dynamic? No, the power dynamic is already there. People know you're the boss. You shouldn't even have to tell them, right? And so those are little tools that leaders can use.
I actually put the desk and the chair up on a platform to elevate myself. I'm just kidding.
I was like, what? Hold on, what?
I think I learned that, and there was the 48 laws of power. But there's a great little tactics actually for speaking and communicating. I think, what was it? The like switch. It was a great book about nonverbal communication and building your influence. That and just and I tried to teach this to my son. He had this thing called the Great Shake, and it was a competition with speaking, you communicating, and manners and whatnot, shaking hands and asking questions. Anyways, I told him the small tactics, like the head tilt, chin jut, eyebrow flash, but I said, don't do it too much, or you'll look like you're twitching. So, these are little things that can endear you to your audience. Um, is that is that a major part of leadership, or is there like a greater part that's just getting others to pay attention? Then what? How do you how do you find your particular style or your leadership personality?
Yeah, it's the sum of your parts, right? It's the sum of all those parts. And so, how do you find your particular leadership style, your leadership personality? To me, it's your personal vision, mission, and value statement on steroids, right? It's just a blown up version of who you actually are. And so, I'll use my own example just for simplicity's sake. My vision in life is to leave a legacy for my family to be proud of. That's the number one thing that I'm chasing every single day.
Mm-hmm.
That's where I want to be at the end of everything. So that influences how I show up when I'm leading people, right? I'm trying to lead people towards a legacy. And then my mission on a daily basis is to inspire greatness in the people around me. And so that means that every interaction that I have to try and bring out the best in the people around me, right? And so that means that whether it's the 7-Eleven clerk, the Uber driver, the waiter, it doesn't matter who it is, a business partner, I have to try and bring the best version of them out. I have a commitment to that, right? That's my daily mission statement. And then my values, that I'm honest, I'm caring, I'm driven, I'm committed to growth. Those things dictate the way that I show up on a daily basis. And so when you have those things, when you have your vision, your mission, and your values, those become your leadership style. Those become your leadership signature, so to say, right? And so every day when I show up for my business and I show up for my employees and the people that I work with, my clients, I have to show up as an honest, caring, driven, and committed to growth person. Right. And so every conversation that I engage in, every action that I engage in, every partnership that I engage in, I have to run it all through a simple test. And I have to ask myself, does this bring me closer to my vision? Does this allow me to fulfill my mission? Does this allow me to exercise the values that I believe in? And as you do that over and over, what happens is you become extremely consistent in the way that you behave and the way that you deal with things and the way that you emotionally regulate. And so people start to really attach themselves to that, and a leadership persona is built, right? And so really your leadership persona is just your character showing up as a signature on every single thing that you do.
That's I'm glad you mentioned that company culture type thing. Uh, every business has the mission, vision, core value statements, plastered somewhere, whether it's Starbucks, Levi's, Dunkin' Donuts, whatever. They'll have you go back to the manager's office, and it's framed on the wall somewhere. But before I joined the military, I thought that was all it was. It was some kind of corporate HR document that it was just a standard. But you go to like the Gap, and I doubt anybody on the floor is going to be able to recite the core values. And what is the mission statement? Anything like that. It was until the military where it was part of the culture. It was ingrained. We had to repeat it. We had to memorize it. And then often we would talk about how one thing or another related back to, say, our ethos or our core values. And it is incredibly huge part of this. A part of leadership is driving the culture of that mission, whatever the business, whatever the project you're having. So how does one communicate? How do you translate these values into the daily life of leadership?
There's a couple things that you need to do. The first thing is you need to make sure that your culture statement or your vision, mission, and values, that it's clear, it's concise, and it's honest. The worst thing that you can do as a business owner or as a team leader is to have a vision, mission, and value statement that doesn't line up with who you actually are. That it immediately breaks trust with people, right? And so you have to make sure that it's clear, it's concise, and honest. It can be aspirational, meaning it can be who you want to be, but you need to be actively working towards that on a daily basis. So that's the first thing, is be clear, concise, and honest with what you're telling people who you are. The second thing is what I call the 10X rule. So we have a rule in our company that we go by, that if something is important, it needs to be repeated 10 times in 10 different ways. Because not everybody learns the same. Not everybody gets it the first time. And so if these things are your values, you need to be talking about them daily. And to your point, like you said, how does it relate back to what we're doing on the floor, right? Or what we're doing as a business, right? So one of ours is to challenge. That's one of our core values, is challenge. We challenge the status quo in everything that we do. And the way that I put it, I have a little quote. I say we assault the commonplace. We assault the common, and we want to be uncommon. We want to be above that. And so we always use that word challenge. How are we challenging this? And so it could be, if we're stuck on a project, I might just throw that word out there, and I might say, hey, who has a challenge for this? How can we take this a step further? How can we make this better? How can we take this somewhere else? So I'm showing them, hey, this is important to us. It's something that we ingrain in everything that we do. And then more importantly, I'm rewarding the behaviors that align with it, right? So if you align with that challenge, then I'm going to reward that, and I'm going to highlight that, and I'm going to send out an email to the team, or I'm going to say in the meeting, hey, Joe did a great job challenging the status quo with this initiative that he brought forward, or this issue that he brought up. Like, you have to operationalize the words. Otherwise, they're just words on a wall. They're like, to your point, they're just something that HR got paid a lot of money to sit down and write. You have to be able to show people, what does it look like in action? Show me culture in action. And that's an exercise that you can do as a leader, is sit down with your team and say, write your core values out and ask your team, what does this look like? So say, we'll just use an example. Say one of our core values is innovation, right? And that's who we are. We innovate. Okay, so then ask your team, what does innovation look like in the office? What does innovation look like client facing when we're dealing with clients? What does innovation look like in the community? What does innovation look like in interdepartmental conversations? So when you're talking with somebody from a different department, what does innovation look like, right? And so what you're doing is you're getting really granular on what those behaviors actually are. And so you're getting, and again, it's the 10X rule, right? You have to be 10 times as clear as you think you need to be, because most people don't get it. And so you have to be overly clear about it. So those are some tools that you can use to start to make that culture come to life.
Touching back on the core values, you've got personal values, and you've got, say, if you're an entrepreneur or small business, or maybe it's a large business, you've got the company's core values. But I really love how, what was it, Traction and the follow up, Get a Grip, how they create the core values or redefine the core values with the executive team. So everybody gets, in fact, it goes down through the departments, as I recall, how everybody gets to help decide on what the values are for the entire team. Uh, and I believe that helps everybody take a little bit more ownership of it.
Absolutely. I think when you give people a say and you give people ownership of it, they're more likely to adhere to it. They're more likely to live it because it's their words, not yours. Right? I'm not
Mm-hmm.
forcing this on you. And that's why it's so important for leaders to use words like our and we and together and us, right? Like it's our company, it's our team. We're doing this together. And so when you do that and then you actually give them ownership of it, now you have something special. Now you have
Mm-hmm.
something special. Otherwise, people feel like a cog in the machine, right? And you don't want that. You want people to feel like they're a part of something that they're building. That's the number one thing that influences job satisfaction is people want to know that they're doing meaningful work. And so in order to make that work meaningful, you have to make the mission of the business meaningful.
What about handling unexpected challenges? Uh, how do you lead a team through uncertainty?
It's consistency. It's consistency. The greatest compliment that I ever got from a player was that he said to me, Coach, I can't tell if the sky is falling or if you hit the lottery last night because you're the same dude every single day. And to me, that's what leadership is. It doesn't mean being a robot, but it does mean being the lighthouse in the storm, right? So when things are going sideways, when there's unexpected change, you can address the change and you can say, hey, this is tough. We're about to go through some adversity. The waters are about to get rough here. But I believe in you. I believe in our training. I believe in the vision, mission, and values of this company. And we're going to move forward. And I'm going to be the first one off the boat into the fray. I'm going to be the first one over the hill. And I think that to me is true leadership, right? And so it's your ability to be extremely clear and extremely consistent in your directions and in your priorities during those times of uncertainty. One of the things that you really have to do when that uncertainty strikes is you have to clarify your priorities, right? Because when there's chaos, people tend to overcomplicate things. And so they freeze, right? Especially team members. They freeze. They're not sure what's the most important thing. And I'm sure somebody in the service, right? Like when things go sideways, there's a really quick order of operations. Hey, here's are the things that become priority when bullets start flying. These are the things that we need to get done. And so you have to have that as a business. When you're going through really tough times, it's like, okay, we may not put the same amount of effort into R&D or internal processes. It may be, no, we need to drop every ounce of resources that we have into sales and customer retention because we need to survive right now. But you have to clarify that as a leader. And so you have to be able to put those priorities out and be honest and be open about those things. And then again, at the end of the day, you're the leader. You have to be the first one over the hill. You have to model it. You have to show people this is how we go to war. This is how we do what we need to do when things get hard. And so if you do that and you've trained people well enough, then you'll be fine through that change, right? You'll be fine through that change. But again, not all people are wartime generals. There's some people that really struggle with that. You have to be able to emotionally regulate yourself before you can try and lead a team through change. Because if you can't emotionally regulate and you can't deal with adversity and you're all over the place, that will be reflected in your team. And I say all the time, chaos breeds complexity and complexity breeds more chaos.
Well, like you said, you've got to lead yourself first, right? And can that emotional intelligence be learned, or is that more of a, more, I don't know, internal personality type?
It can be learned, but it's intentional. You have to be really, really intentional at how you learn it. And some people get opportunities in their life to learn it really well. So, like for instance, children of trauma, children of abusive households, children of addicts, they tend to learn emotional intelligence really early because they have to learn to read a room. They have to learn to read, is mom or dad, what's the emotional state in the house? Am I the child tonight, or am I the protector tonight, or am I a victim tonight? So they tend to learn that stuff really quickly, right? And so for other people that maybe don't have those experiences in their life, you have to be intentional about trying to learn it. And part of that is, one, being a great listener and becoming an empathetic listener and being able to try and feel other people's energy and be able to feel other people's emotion and be able to look for signs of connection, signs of concern, signs of confidence, signs of belief, all those things. You have to start to be really intentional about that. So I urge leaders all the time, not even just leaders, but anybody that wants to, if you want to be elite, learning the people game that's the game changer. That's the cheat code to winning at life, right? The things that I've learned through my sports psychology degree and my PhD that I'm finishing now in psychology, those things have helped me so much in business, so much in my personal life. And that, and the fact that I am one of those children that came from trauma. And so I learned emotional intelligence at a young age. And so those tools, those psychology tools, are absolute cheat codes if you want to be successful with people.
And that's all in a good sales manual, right?
Absolutely.
Uh,
Absolutely.
that's basically all sales is psychology, right?
Yep.
And all business is sales. Uh,
Absolutely. Life is sales.
but okay, but there's the, I guess, the book smarts and the street smarts type of thing. So there's what's in a book, what's in a course, what's in a seminar, and then there's experience. So how can we practice leadership? Maybe on the way through up the ladder.
Mhm. Yeah, that's a great question. So, one of the first things that I learned as a coach, when I was coaching athletics, was that theory is great, but application is worshipped. That was a quote that we used a lot. So, if you can execute on things, that's really what matters. So, there's a lot of people out there. It's why the self help industry is so big, right? There's a million books out there that'll tell you how to live a great life. But the problem is, most of those books are just filled with theory, they're not filled with execution. So, in order to execute, you have to have systems in place. You have to build guardrails for yourself. And so that means that you have to look for opportunities to do what I call watching the tape, right? So in athletics, you always watch your film back and you see what you messed up, and you do that. You have to do that in your life as well. So you have to be, if you're somebody that wants to practice these skills, you should be grading yourself on this. Look for those opportunities to practice empathetic listening. Look for those opportunities to ask better questions. Look for those opportunities to model leadership behaviors, to be consistent, to be creative, all those C's that we've talked about, and then actually grade yourself on it and give yourself that ability to have critical feedback, and then ask the people around you as well. And the best way to do that as you're growing is to seek out stretch roles, right? So meaning roles that are at the edge of your current capacity, roles that are a little bit scary to you. And you should be continuously searching those things out and then evaluating, right? And you'll like this as an ex-military, before action reviews and after action reviews. You need to be doing those in your personal life and in your business life. What did we want to have happen and what actually happened, right? And you need to be going through those. So again, it's building a system around you so that you can practice these things in life.
Absolutely right. In fact, I really appreciate you mentioning the AAR, after action review, because it's actually, uh, it may seem like a chore, but it's an incredible tool for uh, process improvement for leadership, uh, and the ability to look at what went right as well as what went wrong. How and nobody wants to look at what went wrong. Nobody wants to say what, and it's not about blame. It's about avoiding making the same mistakes over again, or at least uh, what could have been, what can be improved upon. And I think that's what we're all looking for. But there's something in our the human condition, our design, it doesn't want us to look at the embarrassing parts, right? How we didn't do everything perfectly. So as a leader, is it seems like something that's really important: ability to look at your weaknesses, an ability to uh, maybe uh, diplomatically help others with their areas they fall short on.
Yeah, it's your ability to emotionally detach from the result and be able to evaluate in a non-judgmental way, in an objective way. How do I evaluate the process? I'm not worried about the result. Let's fix the process, because if we fix the process and if we focus on improving the process, you will get better, right? In the military, if you improve the process of kicking in a door and clearing a building, you will clear more buildings and you will have less casualties, hypothetically, right? Obviously, the enemy has a say in that, but for the most part, you will get better, right? On a football field, if you improve your offense's ability to operate, you will score more touchdowns. The touchdowns are a byproduct of you getting better at the process. And so in your business and in your life, you should be evaluating your process and not judging it, not looking at the process as right or wrong. The actual win and loss doesn't matter, right? It's the process up to that point. Like I had a coach, and I used to love this. I had a coach that I worked with that when he was showing film to the basketball team, he would always end the clip before you could see whether the shot went in or not, because he didn't care. The result was irrelevant. It was the process. It was, how was the passing? How was the spacing? Were we in the right place? Did we move the ball effectively? Did we do all these things? If we do those things, then the shot will take care of itself, right? And so I think a lot of times in life and in business, we get so caught up on results and we get so emotionally attached to them that we can't evaluate the process because we're always worried about what the result is.
Was that? I think that's a Ben Franklin quote. Mind the pennies, and the dollars will take care of themselves.
Yep, same concept.
I think so. But then again, I always butcher quotes. But so okay. So I want to become a better leader. Where do I? Is there some kind of an assessment that I can take to find my strengths as a leader, my weaknesses as a leader, and then how do I uh, how do I start making those process improvements?
hmm the best assessment that you can take is honest feedback from the people around you. It's honest feedback from people that you trust, that you know will be honest with you. Number one, so you have to build relationships that allow for that, right? But you have to ask them, what are things that I do really well? What are things that I do that I make look easy that are hard for other people? Then you find out your strengths. What are things that I do that drive you nuts? Like I used to ask my staff this all the time. What's the thing that you go home and complain to your wife about with me? What's that thing? What is it? Because that's going to tell me something that's a weakness or something that's an opportunity to improve for me. And so you have to ask those types of questions. And then you have to also ask, hey, what are some things that I should be doing that I'm not? And you ask yourself those things. And then the other part is looking at people that are in the role or in the position or have the life that you want, and ask yourself, what are the things that those people are doing that I need to upskill in? What are the things that they're doing that they're better than me at? Right. And so that's the number. Those are the first places that you start. Then from there, my recommendation is always invest in a coach. Always invest in a coach. There is a reason that people like LeBron James, people like Kobe Bryant, people like Michael Jordan have coaches. They're the best in the world at what they do, and they have coaches, right? The best business owners in the world, the biggest entrepreneurs that you can think of, spend hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not millions, on coaches and mentors. You need to find those things and invest in them. That is the fastest way to improve. Now, you have to vet those people, right? You don't just pick someone off the street, but you need to find somebody that can help you improve on those things and give you a non-biased opinion of what's going on and where you need to improve, and then give you those tools to improve.
Okay, let's go a little deeper on that. Finding the right kind of coach. There's business coach, there's life coach, there's leadership coaches, there's strength coaches, and I know people that have 7 different coaches and then spend hundreds of thousands of dollars. But I know that as a small business owner, an entrepreneur, even middle management or an executive, they're not gonna do that right off the bat. But how do you know what kind of coach, and then how do you find and vet that coach?
Mm-hmm. I think number one, you have to be extremely clear about what you want. What are you looking for in a coach? What's the desired outcome? Right? And then you have to find somebody that can give you that desired outcome. So if your desired outcome is strictly business related and you say, I just want to get better in business, well, then you need to go get a business coach, right? If your goal is to become a high performer in everything that you do, leadership, business, relationships, all that stuff, then you need to go find a performance coach. You need to find somebody who's fixing the systems in your life that allow you to perform at a high level in all of those areas. Now, when it comes to choosing like a business coach or a leadership coach or any of the type of coach, really, I have some rules that I use. I'm not saying that these are the Bible by any means. They're just things that I believe in. I think that you need to find somebody who's done the thing already, right? Like there's a lot of coaches out there who've never done the thing. So for instance, there's a lot of business coaches that have never run a business. The only business they're running is their coaching business. To me, I don't want to take advice from you on how to scale my business or how to build my business. You're only running one business. You're teaching other people only what you know, right? And what you've done experience since you've started this coaching business. To me, that's not the way to do it. And so I always want to look for somebody who has done the thing. The other thing that I like personally, especially from a business coach, is somebody that does not make the majority of their income from coaching. Because to me, that shows me that they're in it for the right reasons. They're doing it because they want to do it, not because they have to do it. And so to me, that's important, right? So for instance, for me personally, the majority of my income does not come from my coaching, my one-on-one coaching. The majority of my income comes from my consulting with businesses, actually being out in the field, actually doing leadership development with companies. I own a consulting company that does that. The one-on-one coaching and the performance coaching that I do is supplemental. That's something that's completely different. So I think that's really important for people to understand. You have to vet these people that you're paying this money to, because the coaching industry now, trust me, there are a lot of people out there who will get you to write a $25,000 check and will not deliver on what you're asking for. So you really have to vet that person. You have to read reviews. You have to reach out to other people. And I ask coaches that I'm going to work with, do you mind, can you give me a list of 5 clients, right? And I'll go reach out to those clients and say, hey, what's your experience? Let's be honest here, off the record. You know, what have you found with this? The other part is to understand that you don't have to shoot for the stars right away. Like my first business coach, I paid him $2,000, right? Like that was what I could afford at the time. I outgrew him. My business got better. I got better. Things got better. And then I moved on to a bigger coach and a more expensive coach that I could now afford, right? But I do think that you should always hire a coach that's slightly out of your price range. I'm not saying you should mortgage the house and buy a coach, but I do think you need to put some skin in the game. Like you're investing in yourself. You need to be willing to stroke the check. You can't be afraid to pay that money and get in that room, right? But you also can't be afraid to outgrow a coach. That's a good thing. To me, a great coach is somebody that wants to make you so good that you don't need them anymore. Like that's the whole point of being a great coach, in my opinion.
What about generalist versus specialist? I mean, the business coach or life coach versus uh, logistics chain management or sales or relationship coaches. There's a little more specific.
Yep.
Is
I think it's seasons of life. I think you need to know what you need at that time, right? What am I looking to optimize for right now? Like if I'm just starting out and I'm just launching a business, I'm a new entrepreneur, then I need a business coach. I need somebody that's going to teach me business, right? But if I'm somebody that my business is moving along and things are growing, but I'm now looking to optimize and I'm now looking to build, being a high performer in other areas of my life, then I want somebody that's a performance coach. I want somebody who's dangerous in all those avenues and can help me build the systems that link them all together. Right. So I think it's just knowing specifically what is the outcome that you're looking for and can this person give me that outcome? Right. Because there is a difference. There is absolutely a difference between a generalist and a specialist. And you need to know what you need for that time. And then make sure, obviously, you understand the time frame that it's going to take, right? So to me, if I'm working with specifically an operations coach, right, somebody that handles business operations, I might know what my goal is with them, and I might say, hey, okay, I'm going to hire this person for 6 months, and I'm only going to work with them for 6 months. Versus if I'm working with a performance coach, to me, that's kind of like a therapist. Like it should be a long term relationship. Like if you're working with a performance coach, that's somebody that should know you in and out. That's somebody that you should be with long term because you're going to go to different levels and have different devils, right? You're going to have to learn new things. And so I think it's knowing the outcome that you're looking for. It's knowing the amount of time that it's going to take to achieve that outcome and whether it's a long term or short term relationship, and then going from there.
okay. Well, how about the follow up to that is you've found out, you've decided what you need, where you're going, and what kind of coach you need. How do you find that coach and how do you vet the coach?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I start specifically usually with referrals. So I start with people that I know that have coaches and I'll ask them, "Hey, who do you recommend? Who are other people that you recommend?" Then from there, honestly, there's so much information out there on social media. I listen to podcasts. I really want to get to know these people before I work with them. So like my current coach that I have now, that's my business coach. I listened to his material for a long time and I went down the rabbit hole on his social media and I asked other people about him and all these things to the point where it didn't make sense for me to not work with him. Like he checked all the boxes. He had all the things that I wanted. He was in the rooms that I wanted, all these things. And so it made sense for me to work with him. So I think you have to do your homework. And again, start with referrals. Start with people in your group that you know or in your network that you know that work with coaches. And then don't be afraid to take the meeting. Don't be afraid to do. To me, if you're a good coach, you should offer a free coaching call. That should be part of just your standard practices. So if somebody comes to me and says, "Hey, I'm interested in working with you," I want to have a one-on-one coaching call with you because I want to see if you're a fit for me as well. Right? I
Mm-hmm.
think it's a red flag if a coach just says, "Yeah, I'm good. Here's the payment info. Send me your credit card." Right? Like, no, you should be vetting each other. This is a mutual relationship. This is a two-way street. I want to make sure that you're the right type of client for me. Because here's the thing, if we don't get along or if you don't like my coaching style, that's not gonna help me and it's not gonna help you. You're gonna waste your money, you're not gonna get the results that you want, and then you're gonna go out and badmouth me. Right. And so to me, you have to vet both ways. You have to be able to do that. And the only way to do that is to get meetings. So I think sometimes people are scared to take those free coaching calls because they know there's going to be a pitch involved, right? At some point, the coach is going to say, okay, does it make sense to move forward? Right? You can't be afraid to say no. You can't be afraid to say, hey, listen, I'm going to continue to explore my options, right? And I think if you're a good coach and you're in it for the right reasons, you respect that and you understand it.
That makes perfect sense. It, are there other potential pitfalls with hiring the wrong coach or uh, I don't know. What other mistakes are there that could be made building this relationship?
Definitely. If somebody tells you they have a 12-week program that's going to fix all your problems, it's a huge run the other way as fast as you possibly can. Um, Anytime that somebody tells you they have a program that works for everybody, it's not true. Coaching is not a cookie cutter thing. I don't coach any of my clients the same way, none of them, and I never did as a sports coach. Every athlete is different. Every client is different as a performance coach, right? You have to treat people as individuals. So that's a huge red flag. If somebody's just regurgitating information to you, that's a problem. Because that means that they don't truly understand it, and that this is just what it's a money grab at that point. So I think that that's a big red flag. The other thing is if they're constantly upselling you, right? So if you start the relationship and all of a sudden they say, "Hey, well, why don't we do this as well? It's only going to cost you an extra $2,000," or "Why don't we do this as well? It's only going to cost you an extra $4,000." Because to me, that's coercive selling. Because that person's already in a relationship with you, so they feel obligated to continue to purchase from you because they feel like if they say no, it's going to damage the relationship and you're going to give them less effort as their coach, right? So I think upsells are a huge red flag.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the other thing for me that I think is a red flag is a lack of availability. Like if you're a coach, then you need to be available. I'm not saying you got to be available 24/7, but I don't believe in the whole like, oh, you're going to get me once every 2 weeks for 20 minutes. Like that's not coaching. That's 20 minutes. What do you get through in a 20-minute conversation? Nothing, right? So those are some of the red flags. The other big one is just pre-done content. Like if they give you pre-made content all the time and it's not an organic conversation, like that's not coaching. You're presenting at that point, right? You're selling them a course. You might as well have just sold them a course. You're giving them a course and charging them for one-on-one coaching. That's not right. Right. And so I do think that there's a lot of issues in the coaching industry. It's why I waited so long to even open one-on-one coaching. I didn't do any one-on-one coaching for the first 3 years that I was a business owner. Even though I had these skills, I had, the mental performance side was something that I have over 10 years of experience doing. But I waited because I didn't like the way that the professional coaching was run. I didn't like that. And I didn't want people to see me as a coach. And so I made sure that I built my businesses and I built myself as an entrepreneur before I started coaching people one on one because I take that word extremely seriously. Like if I say that I'm your coach, that means I'm your coach. And I don't think that there's a lot of people that do. That's just me being honest.
So you believe that someone should be a success in their own field before coaching others to become a success in their field?
Yeah, I don't think you have to be, like again, Michael Jordan's basketball coach is not better than Michael Jordan at basketball, right? But he is better than Michael Jordan at specific aspects of it. So I don't think you need to be, the CEO of a multi-billion-dollar industry to be able to be an entrepreneur coach. But I do think you have to have some proven success. You have to have been able to build something to a certain point, and you have to have a certain skill set to be able to do it, right? I think that's important.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that's a good point to start landing this plane. And we'll go into the final segment of the episode called the Countdown to Impact. That's 3, 2, 1. 3 books, 2 quotes, and 1 person that has had an impact in your life.
Absolutely. 3 books,
2 quotes, and 1 person.
three. Okay, so 3 books. The first one would be Meditations by Marcus Aurelius. That's a pillar for me. The second book would be Shoe Dog, the Phil Knight story. That I thought that was phenomenal. And then the third book would be I'm looking at my shelf here to make sure I give you a good one. Oh, The Last Arrow by Ewan McManus.
Hmm.
Those would probably be the 3 books that I would choose. 2 quotes. The first one would be The Man in the Arena, Theodore Roosevelt. That whole quote is unbelievable, and it's something I keep. It's hung in my bedroom. It's framed in my bedroom. I have another copy in my office, so that's a big quote for me. Um, and then the second quote would be "Pressure is a privilege." That's something that I hold on to at all times. Is that pressure is a privilege. There's a lot of people out there in the world that never get to feel that feeling of having pressure. Everything that you're feeling is you're lucky. You're fortunate to be feeling that pressure, and so treat it as such.
Hmm.
It's a privilege. And then one person that made an impact in my life would be, I mean, first off, my mom, definitely. But secondly, would be Coach Sean Manuel. So I worked with Coach Manny at UNLV when we were coaching together. And he is the most disciplined, authentic human being I've ever met in my life. And he sees greatness in people even when they don't see it themselves, and he has a way of pulling it out. I mean, he was instrumental in the man that I became. I met him at the right time. He was the right mentor for me, and I wouldn't have had the career I had if I didn't meet him.
Terrific. All great examples. Uh, Coach, is there anything I haven't asked that I should have?
No, man. I mean, you didn't ask if I was an Eagles fan, which I am. So go Birds! I got to sneak that in there. It's football season.
Well, I'll tell you. I'll tell you what. If anybody wants to reach out, connect with you, find your books or hire you for speaking or coaching, where do they go to find you?
Yeah, our website is edgeleadershipacademy.com. And then I'm on all the social medias. It's the same handle. It's at Coach D Kitch. So D is in David and then Kitch as in kitchen. So at Coach D Kitch on all the social medias and edgeleadershipacademy.com.
Awesome. Well, Coach Kitch, I appreciate your time and your experience and sharing your knowledge with our audience. Thank you very much.
Thank you, brother. Thanks for having me.